this one off and just kind of, I guess, give you all a bit of a background on what we at SAS do as a marketing team, and then working with our brilliant marketing sciences team led by Greg in terms of measuring the impact of that and what that looks like practically in a day-to-day for us. Move these slides up. Cool. So before we kind of get underway, just to give you a bit of background on SAS and who we are. Don't want to assume that you know it, but I'm sure a lot of you do. It's not the Secret Service, which is a bit disappointing. Well, it could be. We would never tell. But we are an analytics business. Our vision is to transform a world of data into a world of intelligence. So we're helping our customers and our clients realize value from their data. So whether that's be artificial intelligence for saving cheaters or banking solutions, there's a whole range of solutions for our product. But that by no means means that we as marketers are immune to the challenges that come with a lot of data. So we do use our own tools, but we're also the same as you guys, trying to solve problems, trying to work out what to do with all the information that is coming our way. We were looking at some numbers, and in 2025, there's a IDC report around that says I think people will have an interaction with online devices over something like over 4,000 times in a day. There's data being generated through online means. So that's a lot of people, a lot of data, and that's something that our customers and consumers, whether we're SAS or whether we're one of your organisations, need to factor in. So jumping into the next slide here. Cool. So I just wanted to, I guess, spend a bit of time, and I think we all know this intuitively, but just around the complexity of reaching some of our customers and our audiences. From a complexity standpoint, everyone's super connected and digitally empowered, and that goes across a range of sources. If I was thinking about my journey this morning, I'm on Google Maps, I'm on everything, trying to work out, okay, what am I going to do? Should I jump off here and catch the train? Should I jump off here and get Uber instead of a cab? What about this bus lane? I'm thinking about a whole range of stuff, and I've got the ability to look at all those options at my fingertips, and that's my expectation. We're dealing with that. There's a complexity, I think, that we're all trying to handle as marketers, and our consumers are really dealing with in their day-to-day as well. Just because we think it's simple for them doesn't necessarily make it a simple execution for them. From a technology standpoint, as marketers, I've been in the digital marketing space for over 10 years now, and even thinking back to the start of that journey, we used a couple of tools to measure our campaigns. We were relying on Excel, we had maybe a couple of analytics solutions, and that marketing technology space has just grown and grown and grown. If we think about the context and that expectation again for our customers, there is an expectation that they will have experiences that are relevant to their context, and I think as marketers we're trying to reach them at the right time or at the perfect time, and I think trying to remember that just because we want them to see something at the perfect time for them, that's not necessarily the perfect time for them. I know, again, if I think about my own experience as a consumer, my expectation is that whoever's messaging to me will know what I want and when I want it, and I get frustrated if I'm being retargeted with ads for something that I've already bought, and that diminishes my experience. So that's I've already purchased the flight on Qantas, but I'm still seeing flights to New Zealand pop up. I get frustrated by that, and my expectation is they'll know, but it's perhaps an unrealistic expectation. And again, I think our customers, if we talk about the evolution, they want to be engaged with respect, not talk down, hey, this is what we think you need, but really have that conversation. And I think, again, if we all put ourselves in a customer's shoes, we are all customers at some level. We're all engaging with advertising, whether we want to or realize it or not, and we're all having an experience with brands as a result of that. And then that leads us on to accountability. So again, we need to, as marketers, be consistently proving the value of our programs and our campaigns, which I think is a good thing, but I think it comes with its own challenges, right? At SAS, we do track everything. Everything is tracked, and that everything we get a lot of data, which means we've got to do something with that data. And Greg's going to talk about what we do with that, which is very helpful. And I think knowing what's going on can be a strength and a weakness. When you have the ability to see day to day or hour to hour what the results of your campaign are, it can be very easy to want to do something as a result of that and shift tacks because this is not working, but rather than taking into consideration a longer term view. So I think there's a tension of wanting to be reactive, and obviously you need to have that towards an overall bigger picture goal. And I think as well, when you do get a lot of data and a lot of numbers, and I know that we want to be obviously a data-driven organisation, as well as for you guys using that data, I think we sometimes forget that there are people on the end of that data who do want to have an experience with a brand that talks to their pain points, that recognises, hey, you've got a solution that I need, rather than just hoping for the best. I know that we do have the ability to track everything in SaaS. Not everyone has that luxury, but I think if I can kind of offer any advice here, just start somewhere and agree as an organisation. Okay, what's this next thing that I can measure? What's the next step for us? And you'll start to get somewhere and work out the numbers that do make sense. Cool. So I'm just kind of skip through here, and again, that's from a customer standpoint. These are the things that are influencing our customers, our consumers, and that's obviously a fairly complex beast. And then if we look to the environment that SaaS ourselves have, so we have a fairly large and substantial marketing organisation that spans across the globe, and that throws in another layer of complexity, right? Because we all have some view on how we should be talking to our customers and what we should be producing to help have that conversation. So just to put that in context for us, we have a global marketing team that provides direction and strategy and content, messaging and the tools that enable us to do our jobs. We then have a regional organisation, so you'll see there sort of Asia Pacific, EMEA, US and CALA that have a regional take on our marketing efforts and how that translates. And then we have go-to-market teams, our colleagues are here today, Danny, who then execute in country. So again, when you start to layer in all those parts of our organisation, it does start to get, again, fairly complex. So as a marketer in the AP region, we're trying to work with all of the above to execute upon our campaigns in a way that makes sense to our local audiences. And so what does that look like when we're executing? Again, we obviously, we're talking a lot about content at the moment. We're talking a lot about the different channels that we use. So we're using a range to do a range of things. Again, that complexity as marketers, I think we're all feeling those effects. We do use social media, both paid and unpaid, to get a message out there. We look at events, both third party, both our own and hosted events. We still use heavily email to drive conversations forward or to nurture our prospects through a funnel. Obviously we have paid advertising in place, and Priority Engine we also rely heavily on through the TechTarget product to drive new contacts. And through all of these channels, these mean we're having multiple conversations, whether that's to acquire a new contact to trigger interest or to generate leads. We're having that messaging challenge and that communication challenge on all of those levels. So we are working across a lot to try and surround who we know to be our prospects, who we would like to be our prospects, and then generating those leads and progressing through sales. So we've got a fair bit going on in terms of how we do that. And sort of to wrap up this. So again, this is our response to some of those changes. We've recognised that there are certain customer expectations, and I think that is ever increasing. And again, I think if we all think of our own experiences, I would say us as consumers have increasing level of expectation around what we have delivered from the companies that are marketing to us. We're looking at a journey. We're looking at it not just being a one-time conversation, but wherever you are in a journey, whether you're just simply researching online, whether you're actually at a decision point, whether you're making that decision, you're in that sales cycle, or you've brought the product, we still want to be having a conversation that makes sense to all of our customers at those points. And again, obviously we do use technology to help do that. We have a lot of automated systems in place, which Greg will talk to, because he knows how they work, which again we rely on heavily to do that. And I'll turn over to him to talk through some of the use cases.
Susie's a smart one in this duo, but I'll try and do some justice to it. I only have one slide, so that's sort of only semi-exciting to look at. But I will kind of touch on this idea of journey marketing and using technology as well, because they're kind of two primary drivers that my team look after. Primarily the first one, looking at custom journeys. We know the journey. John had a great slide with his little Westpac story, and it made me think I should write a report that looks just like it. See if I can do that by today, which is why you have technology. But we use a lot of technology at SaaS, and one thing that Susie talked about is automated lead scoring for scale. The idea that you get a contact coming into your ecosystem from somewhere and knowing what to do with them next based on their behavioral model is kind of pretty tricky. So we drive a kind of a threefold modeling system. We look at account scoring, so we look at the overall behavior of an account. If you look at something like Priority Engine, you'll see it's an account scoring type methodology in there as well. You see all the behavior of an account. We likewise take all the behavior of the account from something like Priority Engine plus syndication, plus our own digital journeys, plus our SaaS events, plus our social media interactions. We try and look at, again, a picture of what an entire account is doing at one time in terms of their research, and looking at what phase they are along that journey. When they interact with our content, all of our content's tagged by customer journey stage, so we know if it's research by or by kind of phase, which part of the journey they're on. Our sales cycle has 8 steps, so we know which part maps to each of those parts of the journey. And then we can look at what the next best offer is going to be for a customer to receive from SaaS based on their account's overall behavior. Get past account behavior, look at contact behavior. So is a contact behavior in a certain way? Are they consuming a lot of content at one time? Is there a period of hyperactivity? I think John likes to call it hyperactivity. I thought I invented it, but really you did. Periods of hyperactivity, what does that mean in terms of context, next step in the journey and moving along their sales cycle with an organization like us? So we score at that contact level quite heavily. We also use that same model of scoring for attribution. So we want to attribute every dollar of marketing to a dollar of sales. Our primary driver is selling software at SaaS. So our primary attribution model is how much pipeline are we generating, and then how much of that turns to a win. Wins are really important. So as a marketer, I know I get measured on pipeline, and that's pipeline's cool. But the reality is the business needs to make money. So I like to think about how many wins we create for the sales team off marketing impacted activity. That same attribution model we drive across every activity. So we don't do a first in, last out, first touch, last touch, equal distribution. We do a model-based method of attribution. So our analytical model knows which drivers or which levers should be apportioned to which dollar of pipeline. Then we can attribute across that and see which activities are delivering the most. The interesting part of all that is you never really see one activity as better than another activity. You see a combination of activities working together, and all those interactions working together is what drives a really good outcome in terms of win for us. If we do a single channel approach, we don't get great outcomes. If we do a multi-channel approach and we touch people appropriately many times, John had 4, did you have 4 touch points of research before someone's... We see interesting numbers that range from 4 to dozens and dozens, and it really depends who you are in that audience of buyer. Technical buyers like to consume a lot of content. We actually think they like to download a lot of content. We don't know if they read a lot of content, and that's probably the harder part of it. I have a pile of white papers on my desktop on my computer. I'm sure you too. Haven't read any of them, but I downloaded them. But for me, that tells me you've got an interest in a topic, and our brand is at least salient enough for you to touch that piece of content. So that's a good thing for me. Whether you've read it or not, who knows if you have. I know that when our callers call out, that most people don't remember downloading anything. So the white paper on its own is not the greatest thing. The white paper plus the brand plus other interactions sum up to a good marketing experience, right? So we do all that with technology. We drive a hard model in the background. We use advanced analytics, so machine learning and artificial intelligence to build our model, plus a lot of business rules. So anybody that tries to sell you an idea that you can automate this based on pure analytical models, probably wrong. The reality of analytical models is you need to have business rules overlaying that make sense. Our system does both of those things, and people are involved at every step. So even though we have complete automation from contact to lead through to opportunity, someone needs to do something. A personal contact point is really, really much more powerful than a digital contact point in my view, especially when you're looking at what we do at SaaS, which is B2B software sales in a highly complex and developing environment. You need to have a touch point with somebody who also knows something and can help articulate that message. So we kind of use technology a lot. We market across the journey. Our journey is an endless loop. People come back around, they buy again, they repeat buy, they fade out, we have to resell. It's the same model that probably all of you have in the B2B marketing world. So for us, it's a very long, complex journey. When you talk about pre-purchase behavior and what people are doing before they come to us, we do know that a lot of people are doing most of their research before they even talk to one of our people. So making sure that research is on point is really important, and that research gets to them at the point it needs to is super important to us. But following up fast is also super important to us. I've worked in this game for quite a while now and found that it doesn't matter how many great leads we create in marketing, we create thousands of things. If a person in sales doesn't pick up the phone and have a really good conversation, and it's the conversation that drives the next step. So as marketers, we're not selling a bit of technology, we're trying to sell a conversation with an account manager so they can develop the pain in the customer and they can go through their journey and buy something. Our job is to get them up to a point where an account manager can have a great conversation. So we have a lot of evidence built up, and I'll kind of give you an example of something we prepared earlier. This isn't really a company called ABC Technologies, but it really is Something Technologies. It's a company that sits in Singapore, and they are in the high-tech manufacturing space. So it's just one example of how we touch a customer in multiple ways to make an opportunity happen. It's a opportunity for a thing about quality mining. So they build technology products for enterprises, mostly in manufacturing. They want to make sure their manufacturing quality is high. If they have high manufacturing quality, they get less returns, they get less complaints, all those kind of wonderful things you want as a customer organization. It's about a $500,000 odd deal, so it's not a tiny deal. For some of you, that would be a massive deal. For some of you, that would be a tiny deal. For us, it's a nice medium-sized kind of deal that we like to do as many of as we can in a year to make some money. So kind of, you look at the journey. So this is a little slide. This isn't actually a slide. This is a screenshot of my computer from yesterday. I took away all the branding bits that talk about the customer itself and how much money everything's worth. But it's a kind of simple model we do. We have a little tool where you type in the name of the company, and it tells you every interaction point they've had with our organization along their marketing journey. I took out some of the sales interaction points because they just start to get a bit crazy. But you kind of get to see, we have this like dashboard across the top. All this looks easy until you get under the surface and go, how did you figure all that out? Where'd you get all that data from? So the data processing and data integration part, and when we hear from our next guest from IBM about data integration, that should help feed the idea of this is not that easy to do in an automated fashion. But we know what everyone's done, so we know how many email clicks these people have done. So out of this journey, there's probably about 35 people in this current journey at the moment. So it's a fair number of people in the buying group. The account manager says there's 2, right? If I look at all our numbers, so I do this kind of on a semi-regular basis for fun, by every country in AP, so there's about 14, 16, I can't remember, those countries. The average number of contacts that an account manager puts on a deal in our CRM system is between 1.3 and 1.8. Okay, the highest number is actually in one of James's worlds, is 45. So it's 45 people on one deal. The most popular number, or the mode, if you're a statsy person, is 1. But it's between 1.3 and 1.8. The reality is we know it's between 5 and 7 for most of our opportunities. because we know what people have interacted with our content along the way. So I think it's kind of interesting, that understanding and dichotomy there, that as marketers we see there's a bigger group buying. As account managers, we like to make sure we just have the person signing the contract in the paperwork. Right? We know it's true. It's just true. So we see what they're doing. We see how many email clicks, how many events, and what you can see for an opportunity that is worth about $500,000, people are clicking on emails, about 73 of them over that time period. So that's not a massive response rate, but 73 people who've taken our content based on an outbound communication from SaaS. 3 people have come to a SaaS event, so we love SaaS events, they're fantastic. They're low touch, and we touch a few people at a time, but we have to make sure we get the right part of the audience there. So the bigger group do email clicks. A smaller group of buyers come to an event. One person came to a manufacturing event that we ran with a third party, in this case IDC, so there were lots of people. 7 people downloaded white papers. 2 people actually downloaded an online trial of our software and tested it out in their own environment. They both did that early in the sales cycle. That kicks off an automatic process where the account rep gets a lead and they have to follow it up within 24 hours or someone gets mad. Generally doesn't happen. 160 people came to our website. Outside of that, I can tell you how many seconds they spent on a page, what the eyeball time was, how many site visits they were, what content they looked at, what business area they looked at. So we have a value proposition. Every piece of content on our website is tagged with the business objective. Every piece of our digital content is tagged the same way, so we can track what you've been looking at, and that helps us understand your buying intent. So we look at buying intent from things like Priority Engine, which we import into our system. At the same time, we look at buying intent based on what content you've looked at on our website, via our own white papers, via any events that you've come to along the way. So we have a kind of really good map of that. 3 of those people have engaged us with TechTarget's Priority Engine product as well. So I called out the TechTarget ones because we're at TechTarget today. So that'll be helpful. And we kind of love that. Those buyers we wouldn't have known otherwise. So they're new people. We automatically ingest Priority Engine data on a weekly basis. So every new contact comes into our system with their buyer behavior, and it forms part of our overall scoring model. So that buying intent data just builds and builds and builds, whether it's ours or a TechTarget version of that. It comes into our system and it builds a bigger picture of the customer. So we're not kind of relying on one place to get our buying intent. We're looking to triangulate that across multiple parties. And that's kind of really important to us, that we get a great view of that. There's been 41 marketing specific interactions. That's where somebody has specifically taken an offer of some sort from us. By type of interaction, we have lots of different types of interaction. And there's a basic touchpoint timeline. I've pulled out only 3 types of those, whether they're website visits, interactions, which are where someone registers, so we get their name, their details, and their intent. So it's a more detailed piece of content, and email clicks. And what we see, if I actually map this sales cycle across here, you see these kind of periods of marketing hyperactivity where lots of stuff happens. They coincide pretty tightly with where there's a stage change in our sales process. So the early spike, we had a couple of downloads of lots of downloads of content, lots of web clicks, some event work, and some online trials. At that point, that opportunity moved to its next stage. It popped along a little bit over here, and it spiked up again in the second quarter and our sales cycles are long, by the way. They average sales cycles 144 days for really easy ones. They can go into 300, 400-day sales cycles for decent-sized deals because they're complex. So this is not a bad timeline for us. It's not a click-to-buy kind of bit of software. At that point, we moved to stage 3 of the sales cycle. So we're kind of moving through the cycle at a moderate kind of pace. But you kind of see when there's a period of hyperactivity, when people actually engage with you, it's a great time to have a conversation that moves them to the next step in their sales cycle. So kind of this is the way we do things in terms of what we look at, what we show our teams. The sales team have access to what's called a digital footprint report. They can see everybody's online behavior with SaaS and offline behavior in one report. So when they make a call, they have a great picture of what's happened, how it happened, when it happened, how long you spent there, so they can frame a conversation. they don't ring up and say, my favorite words, we saw you download the white paper, right? Because we know that doesn't really work. We know that doesn't work because our people do it, right? Yours do too, don't worry. They do, I know they do. But when they don't, when they spend time learning how to frame a really good conversation based on behavior, the outcomes are significantly better. So I think James will talk in the panel about how we're going about this process at the moment with one of his team members and working with Tom from TT, and the improvement in conversion based on a proper conversation. So I love digital everything. I love measuring everything. I love modeling everything. But without a human factor that drives that conversion higher, I think you're kind of wasting your time at this end. So you've got to get that two ends together. Marketers, we think marketing is the most important part of everything. I think it's the most important part of any business. The reality is making money is probably pretty important to the business, and the profit motive is also important to the business. So converting leads to deals is pretty important, and that's why that human touch piece and follow-up piece is super important to us as well. And that's part of our model. So I love technology, but I also love salespeople. Something they actually pay the bills. They have the hardest job in the company, except for marketing sciences, which is the actual hardest job in the company. And that's just a visual of our map of how we do things and what we measure. Under the surface, there's a lot of MarTech. Our MarTech map has, apart from all of our stack of SaaS's technology for automation, data management, reporting, analytics, there are hundreds of other pieces of MarTech built in there. So when I look at Scott Brinker's Chief MarTech, you might have probably followed his content, look at his MarTech map. Ours is pretty ridiculous at SaaS. So it's a lot of moving pieces. So I think it's important to try and use analytics to pull out the valuable pieces and then work with your sales team to make deals happen.
Yeah, main takeouts that I think if you were going to remember anything from today, I like a few key points at the end of presentations because I don't normally remember everything during them, but I think just acknowledging the complexity that we as marketers are working in and starting somewhere. I'm sure as technology companies, we're all on that journey somewhere. So I guess taking that next step to finding those areas where maybe a few tweaks in automation or measurement will start to yield some different conversations or some better results, or change the way you're producing content, whatever that number might mean to you. I think learning is a big one. So again, with the analytics piece, we can test and learn pretty quickly. Okay, this is working, this has not worked. We can pivot based on those learnings. I'm a big one on collaboration. I like to ask a lot of questions, and I value that internally, whether that's with the sales team or our go-to-market teams or marketing sciences. I appreciate the input from partners like TechTarget, just to go, okay, what's happening? What can we do? How can we improve this program to get more out of it? And so try to make sure that I'm having those conversations, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But as my own part of my own role, learning and collaborating along the way, and where we can, automating. Again, with the volume of data that we've got coming into us, as much as you can automate some of those decisions or those processes is going to help us all.
So one of the things that dawned on me is the fact that the media mix at SaaS, the things that you are investing in to try to spark this activity, is pretty diverse. Greg, you've worked at SaaS for a while. How has that media mix, if you will, changed over the years? What does it look like today versus, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago?
That's a great question, because I've worked at SaaS for a really long time. So when we used to send out punch cards to customers with software on them, give them a punch card, all we did was printed advertising that we carried around. And that kind of carried on for quite a long time. I think the last 3 or 4 years we've really much more heavily invested in customer journeys. And that means we've invested much more heavily in third-party data sources and research like TechTarget's platform. Increased that significantly. Content syndication we didn't ever do in the AP region probably until 3 years ago. When did we start working? 3 years ago. We didn't do any content syndication. So everything was driven by SaaS's interaction with the market, not other people's interaction with the market. So I think that's been the biggest change, is broadening our horizons. We do a lot more advertising than we did before. We certainly picked up the pace on advertising. SaaS has always been a brand that you never knew of, but was really awesome. So we've been really trying to get that out in the market a lot more. So changing channels, pushing social pretty hard compared to what we did before, pushing advertising a lot, pushing a brand message rather than a technology message has been pretty important to us in the last 3 or 4 years, because we solve super hard, complex problems. We've got to make that simple for the consumer, right? So I think that's probably how our mix has changed mostly.
I love the fact that you're able to directly track what you call and what we call hyperactivity with an acceleration in the purchasing process. And I'm just wondering logistically, how do you guys handle the sales handoff there? When you're detecting something from a marketing perspective, how does that then bubble up to an account manager to then take action on what you're achieving?
Ooh, that's me again. So we have a little system of scoring. So our scoring system runs hourly, 24 hours a day. It's not real time, so we'd like real time, but 24 hours a day scoring system. So the model is running, looking at activity. If it sees a series of activities that run together that would have a probability of a contact becoming an opportunity with a dollar value in our CRM system, it's all very complex. That's the outcome we're looking for. Right? We're looking for any contact that is likely to become an actual opportunity with dollar value. So it's not about converting to a meeting or anything, it's about dollar values. The system will score those hourly, so behaviors are scored hourly. If there's hyperactivity, they will probably push above the threshold and they'll score automatically, and they'll push through as a lead to the CRM system automatically. It's a thing called a score lead in our system. That'll bubble up on the desktop of the CRM system if the rep owns it. If it's an unknown account, it'll bubble out to our inside sales group who'll call out to them. They're supposed to call out to those on a super regular basis, so I'll see them on their desktop every day. But that's how it's done.
Okay. Last question for the sake of time. You know, one of my key takeaways in listening to you all is the fact that you clearly view marketing as a marathon and not a sprint, right? It looks like you're in this for the long haul. You're in this in order to identify as many potential prospects as possible in an account and then influence them as they're doing this journey. But we all know the reality is that sometimes we're coming up against a quarter and sales guys are looking for a quick pipeline. And they may not have the patience, or may ask you to abandon the patience you've shown in influencing an account. Do you change tactic when that happens? What do you guys do to kind of, feed the beast, if you will, when crisis hits?
I'll give the crisis.
You hand the mic to Susie. That's what you do.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think you can approach that in a couple of different ways, but we have just recently had that example where in a solution area there was that very situation. So I think really working hard with what we've already got. So part of that was working with contacts that we already knew in the system and coming up with creative ways to just move that along a little bit further. So using the data that we already had to shift that conversation forward. And I think always keeping something up your sleeve for those scenarios. I think would be a bit unrealistic if we didn't acknowledge it was going to happen. So just having that contingency in mind that there's going to be a need to shift tack. And I think to what we were talking about earlier, we've got a range of channels and a range of people in those buying chains in the buying stage. So we know which levers we can pull to do something in the short term. So I think staying really aware of what your levers are and the data that you've got to help you drive that would be the two keys there.
Fantastic. I think for the sake of time, we're going to have to leave it there. Please join me in thanking Greg and Susie from SaaS.